If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah.
Sending out good vibes.
The blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
The blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
Grimerica.
You do very much see that in Hollywood movies, and I would even say in some like war movies, it's very much propaganda to promote war in a sense.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show, our special celebration week, 6-year anniversary. This will be the third in our week-long episode a day celebration. Help give back to the community for being so great and help us catch up on some content that we've been letting pile up for a bit too long. So everybody wins. And this one is Brenden Weber, the philosophy guy. We had a fantastic chat. Again, this one's been in the... Sorry to Brenden for leaving it in the back catalog or in the unreleased folder for so long, but we just, with the conference and everything else, everything caught up to us, but here it is. Again, episode 353 on the Grimerica Show is going to be Brenden Weber, and we got everybody's favorite podcast host over here, Graham Calfman Dunlop. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, not too bad, buddy. Yeah, this was good. We talked a lot about philosophy in the age of dogmatic science and fake news, and talked about the definition of it. It was pretty interesting, actually. We had a good conversation. You could tell we don't agree on a lot of stuff, but it was pretty cool to be able to just discuss it all. Like, we've had a couple episodes now where we just, talk about ideas without getting all,
we just talked about had one with Shermer we recorded today. That was like that.
Yeah. We talked about the Hollywood influence and the government influence a little bit, and some of the producers and their influence on culture through Hollywood. Talked about objective and subjective reality. Pretty interesting. He's got a political science degree, and he got into philosophy, and he's got a podcast. So yeah. It's good. Awesome chat.
And we are often considered a philosophy podcast.
We used to be until we got into the wrong philosophy. Now we're just off the charts.
But we're still in the charts in most countries.
Just the U.S.
Just the U.S. currently.
The U.S.
We're banned in
censorship.
I think we're banned in India too. That's just because of the language.
Oh, really? Did you ban you for F-bombs?
Yeah.
Really?
No explicit shows in India.
Wow.
That's it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What about China?
No, we get downloads in China.
Really, eh?
Yeah, we do. 100%.
That doesn't affect your social credit score?
I don't know. I'm probably not going to go to China.
No, not yours specifically. I mean, the people that are downloading us are
I don't know. That's their
expats
problem.
in China, or what?
That's their problem. With the show where it is these days, I might not go to places like China or North Korea. What's the Grimerica Show? Was that racist? Sorry. Wasn't trying to be.
That's okay. You can't be racist. You're
why? Because I'm Indian?
Yeah.
I'm above it all?
Yeah.
I'm from one of the most oppressed people in the history of the planet.
So you can't be racist. You can do whatever you want.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, do you want to jump into some quotes right away? What do you want to do?
Geez.
It's a 6-year anniversary week. We've been releasing a show a day for 5 days. This will be Wednesday. This is our Wednesday show with Brenden. This is episode 353, all for free in the back catalog. About 800, 900 hours of conversation and entertainment. And if that has added some value to your life, maybe head over to grimerica.ca/support today and sign up for a monthly through Stripe or Patreon or PayPal or anything you can do to support us. It really does help. Keeps us going, helps us pay the rent, helps us grow. I mean, we need help. We need support.
Yeah, I can't do it without everybody at all.
It'd be impossible.
And that wasn't the plan, but that's what it ended up being like, and we appreciate everybody's support. I mean, that's fantastic.
And then you get the Black Budget feed right away. You get access to the Black Budget.
Yeah, for whatever support amount you want. You still sending that out manually for the Black Budget? Like, if people, you get new supporters, you send the Black Budget feed out manually, right?
Yeah.
There's some interesting content in there, too.
13 questions takes care of itself. But I haven't got Grimerica to that yet.
Yeah, right.
It was just the landing page. I mean, the Grimerica page is too complicated for me to fuck around with too much at this point.
Yeah.
13 questions page is still simple enough that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Without breaking anything, which is important. So also episode 3 in our Great American Road Trip, the most recent one, CAC 2019 and back, Colorado. I guess you probably didn't spend a lot of time in Colorado. I mean, you spent a lot of time there, but you didn't see a lot of Colorado. Because you just dipped in and out. Like I went all the way out the north end of Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's a bit. I just lost my page.
Colorado-Utah border is a little sketchy. I wouldn't want to run out of gas around there.
No, yeah, there's a pretty good stretch of nothing over there.
Oh, yeah. And the somethings that are there don't look too inviting. But Colorado in general is beautiful. I couldn't believe how much it looked like home.
Yep.
Really does. The
like
mountains
British
all look the
Columbia
same.
Too. Yeah, British Columbia.
We had the great house in Pagosa. We had the house up on the hill. And then we had our buddy, friend of the show, Matt, who was letting us use his dad's house down in Pagosa to do some podcasting and stuff like that, where we could just look out that magnificent window at the beautiful mountain range while we're podcasting with John McAfee. We'll be coming out tomorrow in our episode a week special, 6-year anniversary special. Northern Colorado, which was interesting as well. Actually, so when we left Colorado, we talked to Ken, the manager at Elk Lake Lodge, where the conference was with Randall Carlson, which was a tremendous success, in my opinion. Ken sent us on the scenic route to North Colorado, so we took that mountain pass I was talking about a bit in episode 350, where it took us like 3.5 hours to go 100 miles through the craziest mountain pass I've ever been on, and I live like a half an hour away from the Rocky Mountains. I mean, I've even taken the back way from Canmore down those dirt roads to come out in Bragg Creek.
Yeah.
And that's nothing compared to this highway.
Yeah.
You would not want to be on this highway in the snow.
Yeah.
Even in my truck, I would not want to be on that highway if it was snowing.
Yeah.
Because you're going down like 8% grades forever.
Yeah.
Anyway, unbelievable highway. I can't believe they made a highway that high up into the mountain tips.
I mean, it
was snow the whole time.
I'd like to drive around the Four Corners area, like more so in New Mexico and Colorado.
Yeah, I didn't make it
I'd
down
like
there.
to go down to Santa Fe and keep going. I mean, I'd really like to travel all around there.
You couldn't buy weed up in northern Colorado, though.
Why?
From Montrose, there was a store, there was a dispensary just outside
this
Montrose.
is your last dispensary for 200 miles?
There's a place.
Is there a sign that says that?
It said something. It was getting dark. But it didn't clue in. But when we got to Montrose, it's medical only.
Huh.
And then as we got further up into northern Colorado, it was like even the hotels had signs like no cannabis. The one hotel had a sign that says like cannabis is prohibited in this hotel. If we smell it,
what?
we're gonna fine you $250.
Wow.
Yeah, and you couldn't get it anywhere up there.
Too close to Utah, or no? That's on the
Well,
other
I guess
side,
what
right?
happened is each county or whatever got to make their own decisions.
Oh, that's interesting.
And businesses were free to make their own decisions.
Hmm.
And then when you get out of like, I forget what those towns were even called now at this point, but when you get into Dinosaur, Colorado, then you have recreational dispensaries again. I mean, Dinosaur, Colorado, there ain't much to it. There really isn't. And then so from there, it's actually into Utah where the Dinosaur National Monument was, which is cool. You go in there, you drive up the hill, and they've got that building where they've preserved it all. And like you could just see if you just kept taking that rock face off, they'd just find more and more fossils.
Wow.
But it's just one building, like 200 feet long.
What kind of dinosaurs?
There's a Stegosaurus in there, I think a Velociraptor. There's a bunch of different kinds. You can really see where something just scooped all that shit up at one time and deposited it all there. There's no way all those dinosaurs were just hanging out there together and got killed, There's no way.
Well, you think that what do you mean?
I think their bones got washed out and deposited there after the flood. Northern Colorado, when you're driving through up there, you can really see where the deposits were left as the water washed out. And it makes me think that places like Drumheller and stuff like that, all those dinosaurs weren't hanging out there.
So you find
the bone deposits are there from after the flood.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, you got to talk to
so
Randall
getting
again.
random bones about random
Well, they're all
bones
together.
spread
It's
out, and then
picking
they have
them
to
up along the way. But I mean, we don't find a lot of skeletons and stuff, right? They're pretty rare.
Yeah, that's interesting. Then they have to piece them all together.
Yeah. Anyway,
So dinosaurs are real?
apparently,
You don't believe that conspiracy? Dinosaurs are fake?
that they're just here to test our faith, or that they're just, you could just be a reprogram.
Well, have you heard that
I mean,
conspiracy?
you drive through those parts of Colorado and Utah where you can see all the different layers of strata on the rock. And if you think of all those as just being like a defrag of the hard drive, man, there's been,
A lot of restarts.
oh, man.
So
It's fucking insane.
Have you heard about the dinosaur conspiracy? That they really just
let's hear
started
it.
bringing them out? That in the last like 50 years or something, they've made it up. Have you heard that?
No. Dinosaurs, is this a flat earth movement?
That's parallel to that.
Parallel?
Yeah.
Why would they invent dinosaurs just to push evolution?
Maybe uniformitarianism. I don't know. That doesn't make sense though either.
No,
I don't know why they would do it.
Well, we'll have to find us someone to talk to, explain it to us.
I don't know. I don't think we should go there.
We probably shouldn't. Flat Earth didn't go so good. Grimerica.ca/support, guys. Episode 353.
I got a couple
all
quotes
for
here.
free. Could help if you supported the show because it really does help. Helps pay the rent. Helps us grow. Helps us flow. Helps us know that you appreciate the show. No.
Down and Graham going deep. It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
Okay.
Words to ponder and critique.
All right. So this is from the Octopus of Global Control. Thanks, Charlie, for all your quotes. The powers of financial capitalism. So you see if you can guess this too. I know Jay Dyer would get this. He's done an analysis of this book. The powers of financial capitalism had an other far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world of financial control in private hands able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. The system was to be controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world acting in concert, by secret agreements arrived at in frequent private meetings and conferences. The apex of the system was the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were themselves private corporations. The growth of the financial capitalism made possible a centralization of world economic control and use of this power for the direct benefit of financiers and the indirect injury of all other economic groups.
Jonathan Perkins.
No, that was Professor Carol Quigley, Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Time.
I never would have got that.
No.
No chance.
This one's a good one too. It's kind of appropriate. I think it is. This is from An End to Upside Down Thinking. The Difficult Reality. No. That's wrong. The difficulty really is psychological and exists in the perpetual torment that results from your saying to yourself, but how can it be like that? Which is a reflection of uncontrolled but utterly vain desire to see it in terms of something familiar. Do not keep saying to yourself, but how can it be like that? Because you will get into a blind alley from which nobody has yet escaped. Nobody knows how it can be like that.
Nobody. Who's that?
Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winning physicist, describing the dissonance between quantum physics and the everyday human experience.
I also would not have guessed that. I don't think. Anyway, big thanks to everyone for hanging out for 6 years and 353 episodes now.
Congratulations, you too, buddy.
Yeah, Grimerica.ca/support. We're over halfway through our week of releases now. There'll be 2 more. John McAfee tomorrow. And who's the one on Friday?
I think it's Ben Davidson.
Ben Davidson. John McAfee, then Ben Davidson, and then we'll probably go to even just 2 shows a week for a little while here because we still got a lot of content. So better time than ever to head over to grimerica.ca/support and sign up for a monthly, send a one-time donation, do whatever you feel like you can do to help us celebrate our 6-year celebrations. Enjoy the chat with Brenden Weber.
All right, so tonight we've got another kind of swap cast. We've got the philosophy guy here, Brenden Weber. Is it Weber or Weber?
Weber.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's all good.
Darren thought it was Weber. I'm like, why do you think it's Weber, Darren?
Yeah,
I said,
live
why
in
do you
Utah,
think it's Weber?
And it's actually Weber in Utah, so I'm used to it.
That's awesome.
It's very much state by state. It's very interesting.
Right on. So you got a degree in philosophy, and you've been doing this Philosophy Guy podcast about, especially when philosophy crosses, I guess, or as concepts raised in our cultural and entertainment environment. So super interesting. I'm listening to your show, and it's good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I don't know where we want to start. I mean, we're in the philosophy category because there's nowhere else to put us. But we really know nothing about philosophy, or I don't. I mean, I'm interested in it. I listen to philosophy podcasts, but it's a tough one for me sometimes.
You got like one of the top 100 philosophy podcasts on the planet, buddy, and you're fucking...
Yeah, I don't know anything.
So why don't we start there? Can you give us your definition of philosophy? No pressure.
Yeah, I mean, there's even that. That's what I like about philosophy is even that discussion right there is kind of up for debate. But basically, I kind of just look at it as, to put it in the simplest form, is just a way to go into inquiry about the why questions, like answering why to all of these things, and just like kind of just a general inquiry into knowledge. And kind of like the reason I got motivated for the podcast and is I see philosophy as really important, not just philosophy in general, but maybe more importantly, as in like a cultural sense, because you kind of got it right there, where I'm trying to apply philosophy at this more basic level, I guess you could say, and connect it to these like cultural and entertainment things. And in the sense of philosophy as in critical thinking and just having a dialogue and a discussion and just trying to just find new ways to think about things. I think that's just something that's really important for philosophy and also just discourse in society in general. So it's kind of my motivation there. And that was kind of a roundabout answer, but I would say that's kind of my way of telling you what philosophy is.
Yeah, and when you put it that way, it makes sense to us because that's kind of what we've wanted to do too. We're asking the why question. Like I don't have a lot of the answers. I have more questions now than we did at the beginning, but it's about the why.
Yeah, it's like questioning everything to its deepest root, I think, and that's kind of what we do here. Yeah. So I think it was a good fit. That's what put us in that category.
Yeah, and it's definitely not that. What my answer was not the academic answer. Like the academic answer would be more so like around wisdom and that knowledge route. But yeah, my motivation behind the show isn't necessarily that. It's just seeing it philosophy as broader than that academic sense, in the sense that it's a way to think about things and critically think about, it doesn't even have to be about philosophy topics like, what is the meaning of life? It doesn't have to be about that. It can be your way of thinking about, bringing even ideas from philosophy and bringing it to political issues and social issues and just discussions with people in everyday life. And that's kind of that's what brought me to philosophy and why, I kind of been trying to do it even after I've graduated here.
So that's why you started up the podcast to keep that talking about that and getting that out there, getting that discourse out there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. So basically after I graduated, I was like, okay, the job market, I'm still probably going to do this, but I want to get my master's but I also know the job market for philosophy professors is horrendous right now. So I was like, okay, I can't allow myself just to jump in. So, I have like a kind of like a regular job, and then also just, doing this as a hobby to kind of stick with it. And also just, I thought that, I'm going to do this stuff anyway for fun, basically. And, trying to find and write and all this stuff to connect philosophical concepts and blah, 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 and overanalyze movies, which is part of the thing I do on my show. So I thought, you know what, I might as well start a podcast on it. And, some people would be interested in that. And it's caught on a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of my motivation, is just, I want to stick to philosophy and continue to develop my own thinking and share my thoughts if anyone wants to hear. And hopefully they do. And if they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. That's kind of the way I went into it. So,
yeah.
So go to the People's Encyclopedia.
Okay.
And see what the definition of philosophy is. Philosophy, from Greek, philosophia, literally love of wisdom.
Yep.
Is the study of general and fundamental questions about existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and language. Such questions are often posed as problems to be studied or resolved. The term was probably coined by Pythagoras, 495 BC. Philosophical methods include questioning, critical discussion, rational argument, and systematic presentation. So
yeah, there you go. That's cool.
That's definitely the academic answer. And that's why I wanted to come on your guys' show is I've kind of attracted this more philosophy heavy audience, but also the point of my show is to bring people into philosophy. So I'm kind of glad you guys said that, where you're like, okay, I'm in the philosophy section, but I don't know a lot about philosophy, but that's exactly what I'm looking for is I see philosophy much broader. And that, to kind of get into another motivation, is the problem I saw when I was in college was philosophy is very much like, yeah, you can go into it even in your undergrad. You can get into some deep stuff, I guess you could say, and even in the nitty gritty on the issues of discussions. But yet philosophy still kind of in academia and PhDs and professors, it's very much on this ivory tower, in the sense that, undergrad is really the only place people are seeing philosophy or hearing about philosophy or hearing about philosophical ideas. And I wanted to kind of join these other good podcasts and being a little bit, I don't want to say basic, it's just more of kind of discussing some interesting questions or interesting films and looking through it with a philosophical lens, because, there's other great shows. I don't know if you've heard of them. You guys are in the philosophy section, so you might.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about some of the shows you were looking up to in a way.
Yeah. Philosophize This is one that he covers. He's done by Stephen West, and he covers basically. He just went through like the history of philosophy, all like the big periods in philosophy, and covered all those from Aristotle, Socrates, Foucault, all the way through history, right? And okay, I was like, okay, that's covered. He did a wonderful job. I didn't want to do that too much, because it's like I didn't want to cover things that are already covered, because although I like doing this stuff anyway, and 10 people could listen, I'd probably still do it. I still wanted, I had that motivation to grow, right? So, and then there's like another one I would recommend is Partially Examined Life. They go and analyze a text. They'll go read like a text for the week, and they'll go and have like a group discussion, and people can just listen in on it. That's like an interesting way to do it. And then I realized there's another one. I just went on Embrace the Void, the Political Philosophy podcast. Those are some good ones. But I was like, there's all these deep movies that people like, Christopher Nolan movies, right? Most people have at least seen one Christopher Nolan movie, the Coen brothers, those type of movies, those deep movies that people, they go on the internet and they're like looking for theories about. And a lot of times, there's a lot of good theories about those films, but there's also concepts in those films that relate directly to philosophy, and kind of extracting those and kind of explaining them and going a little bit deeper into those. is I saw it as kind of like this bridge into philosophy for the more general public and general audience. And I also didn't want to do just because, honestly, I don't have the credentials, I don't think. But like a Sam Harris type thing, or what Jordan Peterson's kind of grasping on to, that wasn't my thing. I'm not really the quote unquote academic, at least not yet. So I was like, okay, what is my area that I can do that people will, care about and help them connect to philosophy? So
that makes sense. Yeah.
kind of where we're at.
Is Philosophize This worth listening to? I've always wondered, because I got the book, I got the Philosopher's Handbook. I've been meaning to read it, but I'm always meaning to read it.
Yeah, I would check out. I mean, especially intro to philosophy is if you haven't done it maybe since undergrad, or didn't even do, maybe only had to take like one intro class undergrad. Philosophize This is great because he goes through like basically each person throughout history and kind of just gives like he does multiple parts on some episodes, but gives like a 20-minute overview of their thoughts and their thought process and their ideas, and also kind of relating from like person to person throughout history, as we went from Socrates to where we are now with like this more postmodern, modern philosophy. He does a good job of connecting how those ideas develop throughout time. So that's why, I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, it's incredible how if you want to learn about anything at all, you can find it in podcasts. Like that sounds like a history lesson in philosophy that you can get for free, probably. Just whatever you want.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff out there, and that's the other reason I was motivated is because podcast, like YouTube's another thing. You guys have kind of jumped on some of the YouTube stuff, which is another whole complicated aspect. But podcasting, it's so simple. Is someone could get hosting and podcast hosting for like $10 a month. And if they have something interesting to say, they can spew whatever they want for $10 a month, and might as well.
Yeah.
Oh, what about Periscope, man? I mean, I could just go like this right now with this thing, and a bunch of people start. Actually, we're on Periscope, but
just recently
we got the TriCaster, so we can cast all over the place.
Yeah.
Watch the show on D-Live.
Technology's helping so much right now with that type of stuff.
So while we're on other shows and stuff, do you ever follow Molyneux, like in Freedom Main Radio at all?
Oh yeah.
There's a philosopher gone crazy. Is that gone wild?
Yeah.
Philosopher's gone wild.
He's an interesting character.
Let's hear it.
I will say he's not wrong about everything. But I admire his confidence. I will say that. But yeah, he's one that he's a good way to introduce you to philosophy. It's one of those that, I don't know, another example in history. And honestly, I don't know where your audience lies politically or anything. But
all over the place.
All over the place.
Good. That's perfect. I'm pretty much all over the place too, and I can talk about anything politically. So
I like to describe it as left on most things, but right enough to be right wing, considered right wing by most of the left.
That's a big crowd right now.
Yeah,
that's a big crowd.
No, that's the place to be right now, honestly. But but yeah, so like Ayn Rand, I think it's an example of Molyneux. It's Ayn Rand for like the libertarian circles. I have a lot of problems with her philosophy. Yeah. I don't know if that we get into probably too much of the nitty gritty, but let's just say there's some issues with her philosophy. And I plan on doing an episode at some point on my podcast of why. So that's not just like an empty statement. But she's like a good intro, like all of her problems about considering like self-interest being a virtue and all that, all those problems with that statement on her part. She's an intro with her book, Atlas Shrugged, into libertarianism. So if someone is a libertarian, it's a good way to introduce them. And Molyneux, I would give him some credit, and maybe I don't even know if just kind of thought.
So is libertarianism philosophy then? Or ideology?
It's political philosophy,
I guess.
But it is an ideology. But I'm kind of like connecting that because Molyneux is very much on that libertarian circle.
Yeah, I mean, I like how he put out
into philosophy, but I would say he's more so that like libertarian political philosophy is more his thing, and that's kind of why I connected to Ayn Rand.
Yeah,
because I wouldn't consider him Like he's not really going into the nitty gritty issues of philosophy, at least not anymore.
Well,
I
yeah,
think-
not anymore. He used to. I mean, I like the fact that he put out some free books and he put out a free show, and he was talking about the non-aggression principle and some real like
some of his stuff on parenting, his philosophical parenting stuff is great.
And I like that part about him, and that's one of the things that made me realize that people will donate to, and that's one of the things that I thought about when we went to this value for value model that we do with no sponsors or ads. It's like people will donate if you do a good job, and it's up to you to do obviously entertain and do a good job. But it's interesting when you listen to somebody like that. Like I listened to him on and off for probably 8 or 10 years, picking and choosing some stuff and learning some stuff and liking. And I disagree with him on a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah,
especially about a lot of the topics that we talk about. But it's interesting to see what happened in 2016 with some of these guys I've been listening to for years. Like I've trusted at least their honest opinion about things, like not necessarily about controversies that we talk about on the show, like fringe science or UFOs or stuff like that, because he wasn't. I didn't like what he had to say about that stuff. But when it came to political stuff and fake news, it's interesting to see somebody that you've followed for that long, libertarian, go into like almost supporting Trump in a way, and almost like like breaking down the fake news and really falling into that category of just pushing hard back against the globalist agenda. It's interesting to see that happen.
Yeah, and I love your point, because that's basically where I am with him. Is I disagree with a lot of his stuff before, even with his philosophy stuff that he dabbles in. But yeah, that's what really caught me off guard, because I think he even considers himself an ANCAP. I haven't listened to him in a while, so I don't know a lot of his recent views. But yeah, when he kind of started shifting. And to me, this is where I have a problem, is when someone comes across as like this opportunist. Right, and when the Trump situation started happening, that's what I noticed with Molyneux, is he very much started trying to appeal to the Trump supporters. And that's where I know his recent thing, maybe not recent, maybe at least in the last year, he's been very much getting into like race realism and all that stuff. And that's not really stuff he ever got into before. But to me, he's trying to appeal to this certain base in the Trump audience. And that's what kind of threw me off. It's like, okay, I can disagree with you, but if you're going to just start trying to just appeal to the audience for the sake of appealing to an audience, that's when we have a problem. Because to me, you're just being disingenuous in your supposed critical thinking.
Yeah, if he's truly doing that. I mean, you could say that he might just really fall in that category because he sees what's happening from the other side. Like he sees that there needs to be some pushback from what's happening. I mean, and the fake news has played a big part of that. I mean, when you see, it's tough, man. There's we're finding this in Canada now. I mean, did you watch that video I sent you, Darren, about the fake news from the CBC? Like they're doing it in Canada to alternate ideologies and political philosophy here too. Like they will make up stories and bait you in to fakely discredit you and make up stories about you here in the news. I mean, it's really bad in the mainstream news, even in Canada with the CBC, for example. So it's hard not to see that going on. And when people open up that door and see that, it's hard not to rally against that. And what's against that right now? There's not, you're automatically pigeonholed once you rally against that in a way.
Yeah,
does that
I
make
agree.
sense?
You can get pigeonholed into different pigeonholes too, which is weird, which is a weird new phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's like you can be
like anti-vax or
all that stuff,
like,
alt-right,
I mean, look at the people that are getting called alt-right, like Tim Pool and guys that are on the left that are deconstructing the media get called alt-right.
You're the alt-right consists of a Jewish guy, a gay guy. Who's the other one? I was going through it the other day and I was kind of chuckling. It's like you got like, what's his name? Rubin.
Yeah.
Dave Rubin, who's always getting screamed at, and he's a gay guy. And then you got Shapiro, who's a Jewish guy. And then there was a couple more too. It made me laugh. Anyway,
Candace Owens, maybe?
Candace Owens, who's black. And then there was one more.
Yeah.
So that's
I mean, even Joe Rogan gets thrown in the alt-right conversation.
Gateway to the alt-right.
Okay, exactly. Ever listen to Joe Rogan speak?
Yeah, exactly. What was that?
Alt-right adjacent.
Alt-right adjacent, yeah. I mean, come on. The
I wouldn't
labeling is
consider,
just
like, for example, with Joe Rogan, someone that wants everyone to just take some LSD. I would not consider him on the alt-right by any means.
exactly.
But he's gateway to the alt-right.
That's the other.
I mean, you start listening to Joe Rogan, next thing you know, you're listening to Graham Dunlop. And then you're listening to Stefan Molyneux.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's it is frustrating about it. It is how they connect that gateway situation without really kind of any evidence for it. Like, just because, like for example, Joe Rogan's the easy one, just because he has such a broad audience. But let's say you have 1,000 listeners. He obviously has way more. Let's just take a group of 1,000.
Yeah.
And one of those goes down that little gateway, that little rabbit hole to the alt-right. Does that mean that Joe Rogan is now promoting alt-right?
Yeah.
No, like, that's ridiculous. It's like, sure, in 1,000 people, you're going to have a crazy one that's going to decide to go down that route.
Yeah.
But it's not like Joe Rogan is the reason.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing with the Joe Rogan and these other ones, like even Dave Rubin, which I would, can criticize them to a certain extent for. They very much pick their audience. And I don't think, so I will say, you did mention Dave Rubin, and I would criticize him a little bit. Is one thing I applaud Joe Rogan for example, is if he does have someone that has some kind of views that at least people listening are going to question and have problems with, he pushes back a little bit. But Dave Rubin, I used to listen to Dave Rubin all the time. Dave Rubin is just very much submissive to whatever the person he's interviewing says.
Right.
He's very much
I think that's a style, though. I mean, I don't even listen to Rubin, but I mean,
we
kind of do that here. I mean, I got a little triggered on a couple of things. There's a couple of things I can get triggered on: flat Earth, vaccines, a couple of things.
Oh, so okay, yeah. So here I'll push back slightly. Is I agree that I applaud shows that do that, and that's like their message. Like, you guys would fully admit that you do that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, people come to expect that coming in.
Right.
But Dave Rubin, I think, is a little bit different, because he comes in and says, "Oh, we're just having like a discussion of ideas," and he brings it out as very much like a discussion where he's like pushing back and he's very much involved, but he's just not. And then he also kind of very much picks and choose. And I get, like, picking and choosing who you come on the show. That's fine. But he very much acts like it's very much like both sides coming on the show, and it's just not. And this is someone that used to be a fan of Dave Rubin. It's just something I've recently noticed in the past, like, I would say year and a half or so.
Yeah, interesting.
That I wish, he'd kind of, you just change a little bit or kind of evolve his interview style.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or at least be straight up, like, you got, like, we'll talk to anyone and have them have their say, which I think shows like that are absolutely needed. I have no problem with controversial ideas being put out there.
Right. Well, yeah.
Well, it comes to just start not letting your personal ideology get in the way, because, I mean, or your personal philosophy for that matter. I mean, because, I mean, at the end of the day, you could be fucking wrong about everything. I mean, everything you learn, like in 100 years, they're going to be like, holy fuck. Look at these 2019 guys. They just have no fucking clue. They thought this, they were doing this. I mean, that's what we do when we look back 100 years. We're like, oh my God, what are you throwing people in jail because of the shape of their head? That's science.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true.
So, I mean,
especially the health stuff and across the board, just the ridiculous things that people believe and
extrapolate on that. And to a certain extent, who am I to tell this guy that he's wrong, unless it's a moral issue. If it's a moral thing, that's different.
See, for me,
then I think you have a moral obligation to step in. So, no one's going to come, you can't let, racists or anything like that, racism like that, or any sort of
violence.
discrimination,
when it gets to violence,
we're not going to spread any of that. But at the same time, I mean, I'm not proud of myself for how I behaved on our Flat Earth show. Even if I think it's ridiculous, that's not what we do around here, unless we're setting in to do that. And we do that from time to time, where we say we're gonna hash it out, and we do that in the black budget sometimes. But it's tough sometimes because we all do have our personal philosophies and expectations.
Yeah, and that's a good point about, because like the flat Earth thing, there's some ideas, because this is something I've kind of evolved on a little bit, I guess, because to me there is some ideas that are dangerous, and those are like the very kind of obvious racist ideas. You know, if someone's basically borderline promoting genocide of a race, like obviously that's a problem. You probably shouldn't have platformed
Any
it, right?
race. Any race.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if they want genocide of any race.
Yeah. Well, just making sure that.
Oh yeah. But then like something like flat Earth, for example, you know, yeah, like it's harmful if the majority of our population starts believing that, but I have enough confidence, I feel like, in our population that won't become an issue. But yeah, it's like, okay, if you want to platform them a little bit, let them have their say. So then to me, it's like, okay, people can see some of the ridiculous arguments they're making. And that's where it's like, okay, like, because there's some ideas like,
but you got to do
like,
that
okay,
without arguing with them too much. I think I got a little out of line with Weiss. I told her this is my show. I mean, who says that?
Yeah,
my show.
That's okay. What he told you to use your adult brain, and that triggered you, obviously. So you got a little bit of work to do on that. But here's the thing: is what I think what you're saying is, that's what I was going to ask is. So what about the racism? If there's hate speech, if there's that kind of thing, like, do you force it underground through censorship, or let it be shot? You know, let the light shine on it so people know that these things are out there and these people are out there, and let us deal with it. Like, let the public see that for what it is and deal with it. I mean, I'd rather know that the guy next to me is a racist than him, you know, hiding it from me and going underground. You know,
right? So like this is where I'm very much split on this. I completely see your side on that, and I don't even know if this is actually my position. But like, let's like not take it to the extreme of genocide, but someone that's like an obvious racist that wants to separate the population, blah blah blah, that type of stuff.
Like real, like so, no, like speculation. Like you know that this person is. Let's say right. Like maybe I don't know. Slightly more extreme than I would even, let's say like a Richard Spencer. I mean, he's honestly probably I would put in that category. So like, let's say someone like him, maybe let's just, for the sake of this, let's say a little bit more extreme than for sure. Just for the sake of this, like,
but you have like a platform, and you're putting these ideas out, and we expect people to think they're ridiculous. And I think most people would.
Yeah.
But let's say there's someone that, you know, they're kind of on the fence, right? And you put those ideas you put them on like a popular show, and where they're getting like 10,000 listeners in 1 week or something like that. When we do that, to me, it takes those people on the fence and brings them over when maybe they never would have. Where and what I mean by that is when it comes on a show that's seen as like a popular show or seen as legitimate and all that type of stuff, all of a sudden people start seeing that viewpoint as some sort of like legitimate viewpoint to hold.
Okay.
Like, yeah, people might think it's ridiculous, but wait, they're on this show. People hold those ideas. Okay. Maybe it's not so ridiculous.
Okay.
That's where I kind of switch.
So that's a good point. So you have a risk of,
well, that's
people
inciting.
On the fence, you have a no, it's not inciting. It's just giving a platform to somebody that's really racist, let's say, like he's saying. So you got a bunch of people, let's say there's a couple people on the fence that flip over to that side. Is that risk worth the risk of pushing it underground and maybe gathering 10 times that amount of people in an underground movement, or, you know, not allowing it to shine the light? Like, it's really tough to say, because the problem with the censorship that's going on right now is we can have somebody jump in our YouTube and start trolling us, or jump in. It opens the platforms up to sabotage without any kind of, you know, without any kind of like chance for us to say, oh, hey, and this is, and it's happening. I mean, I could cite examples of this happening to people. You know, when the activists get so much attention and they can actually control who's deplatforming who and the cancel culture, it's easy to sabotage people. And if they don't like your ideology, they can go in and sabotage you. But if you have free speech truly and you can't get deplatformed, then that sabotage can't exist. And those people, like the people with bad ideas it's going to come to the light. I mean, I think the other point to make about your thing is if that guy truly is racist, he probably won't go on that show. Like if we know about a guy that's, I mean, it can always slip through the cracks, of course, but I mean, if he's that bad, he probably won't get on that show with 10,000 people.
Right. And
you hope.
Yeah, that is the good point. And that's where it's an interesting discussion, is because you want people to see how ridiculous these ideas are. And you're right, that underground idea, in theory, it could happen, but it's kind of like you have to weigh it out. Like which one is more likely to happen? And that's where I say I'm not 100% aware I lie on this issue. Is because I'm open to, maybe there's, I don't know if there's like data out there or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But like when we have these ideas out where people can hear them and be like, okay, that's ridiculous, and be able to move on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because I don't like hate speech either. I mean, I really do think our words matter. They have power. I believe in the metaphysical aspect of like what I say is.
But I don't know. It's tough. Should it be legislated?
No, of course not. I mean,
I'm not saying it should be legislated.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying even hate speech.
No, I don't think it should be, but that should be. I know.
Yeah,
I know. I don't like it, and I don't agree with it, but I don't think it should be controlled like that.
On a philosophical level like that, when you talk about, not giving people a platform because it might push people over the edge, well, and depending on what the issue is, I mean, who's to decide what that edge is, and if it's better or worse for the greater population to go over that edge.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, who decides what's okay for the society?
And who can control, like, let's say these.
And I'm not talking about on a race thing. I'm talking about on something, for a good example is the vaccine thing, where you can't have the conversation anymore. You just can't. You get labeled, you get shut down, and it's, we've decided that that's not okay to talk about as a culture. And if you do it, you're going to get, deplatformed or shut down, or, there's just, I mean, that's a little bit more scientific than the cultural stuff. The cultural stuff scares me more in a way. Well, actually, it's a different type of fear because you have these activists now that can label people for no legitimate reason. Like they're calling people racist. They're calling people, Nazis.
That's a good whatever. Example. Like how you can justify punching somebody in the face because you think they're a Nazi when it's ridiculous that they're a Nazi. I mean, there's very few Nazis that are gaining any kind of ground here. It's calling somebody in a red hat a name like that and allowing yourself to punch them. I mean, that's just way past the line. So how are you allowing activists to do that? And yet, on the other side, science from vaccine safety is not allowed to be discussed. I mean, those are both pretty critical issues to me.
Yeah, and I will like to clarify. Like, I'm not saying this should be.
No. We're just philosophizing. We're doing philosophy.
Yeah, I'm very much.
Are we doing it right?
Yeah. You definitely. Yeah, you are, because that's the other good point you bring up, though, is to clarify that is also to say, to me, people should start looking at it through that framework. That just because you personally don't agree with something does not mean the government should be legislating it, right? And that's very much where I'm at. Like, I have certain political views, but I'm very much open to not like just having the government demand these things just because to me, it's just a dangerous, slippery slope to go down.
Yeah.
But that's where, kind of going back to the motivation behind my podcast is it's very much trying to get this dialogue going again, to be able to have conversations, even though I'm not really getting into controversial ones, more so that you guys try to get into, which I do think, has a necessary
We didn't
place.
even try to get into those. It just sort of happened. And some of the topics that weren't so controversial 5 years ago.
And, but yeah, that's what I mean is it comes down to a personal choice of, the person doing the interviews or person that wants to have the discussions. And also it's just like, there's a fine line between, like I said, the vaccine issue, the flat earth issue to me are on a different spectrum than say like the race issues.
Yeah. Because the other thing to think about is, I mean, if someone can do, if we can start deciding who can and can't, this guy's too right or too left or too black or too white or too whatever to go on that show that has 10,000 a week, then how far are we from saying, well, there shouldn't be any shows that have more than 100,000 a week because that's just too much power for a show even, I mean,
well, and the other thing is too that some racism, like there's a lot of people discussing that, like the difference between white people being racist and black people being racist or whatever, for example. So then somebody's got to define that as well, right? So you're gonna lock down these platforms based on hate speech and racism and all this, and somebody's gonna make that definition that you can't be a racist, Darren, because you're a Native Indian, and I can because I'm white.
What?
Yeah.
I can't be racist? No. Well, you better tell that to a bunch of people on Twitter. We got accused of not having enough diversity on the show. I guess that's when you made it. When you told you're not diversifying enough.
No, that's when you're doing something right. Is when you finally have a lot of haters.
Yeah. So what made me think, I was listening to your podcast, how you analyze movies and stuff like that too, and then kind of along the same vein, I was wondering how does, like, I got two kind of things to ask you is how does the influence in TV shows and movies affect philosophy and our culture? Like we've had a couple of episodes where we talk about the injection of content into movies and TV shows from companies that are actually companies that are somewhat funded by the government as well, but also the Department of Defense and other like real government departments. So that affects our culture through entertainment. Mm-hmm. And then the other point is also about science and like the dogma of science and how the science of consciousness, for example, or where we're at right now with quantum physics and consciousness and the materialism to me is sort of falling apart over the last 5 years. At least since we've been
paying
attention to it.
Slow down.
But how
materialism
does that affect
isn't falling apart.
It is falling
materialism,
apart.
No. It's moving over. It's moving over. It's moving over. So that other stuff, it's making room on the step for other people, other not people, but other things than materialism. Because I mean, this stuff is great. And
that's not materialism. Well, I'm not talking about that. That's engineering and stuff, right?
Guess,
like
but no
material products. I'm talking about you as a material person.
It took materialistic philosophy to come up with those
it's
gadgets.
It's kind of your brain.
Don't point at me.
Creating your. I'm not really pointing at you. It's kind of your brain creating your consciousness is what would be, I think, in materialist. It's more of a philosophy still. I'm not talking about...
So you're thinking of just straight on where does consciousness come from, materialism?
Yeah, in a way.
Well, even if your brain's just a receiver, it's still...
No, then it's not. Because the materialist aspect of consciousness, I think, is that your brain is creating that.
As opposed to...
that's where I lie. It's definitely... We want to get into that combo. But to... I guess ask what your question is for sure here. So basically, you're asking like how movies and TV shows are possibly influenced by the government and how that influences culture?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Or philosophy. Yeah. Yeah. Let's start with that one.
I mean, I agree. Like that's a tough one. Cause I'm very much on the end that, for example, like Hollywood is very much on the left where business world is very much on the right. And the idea of like maybe like a conspiracy of, the government, because I guess you could say the government does fund, like, and even on the state level, the government does fund movies and whatnot. But I also do think that like it comes down to the director that was already influenced. So where that origin of the influence comes from, I think we could have a discussion about that. But I do very much think the directors still do have a lot of power, especially with the movies I kind of analyze. It's very much... They're not, I wouldn't call them indie movies, but they're very much indie-esque movies that became popular and like a big time picture studio picked them up.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, okay. And how it influences philosophy, I don't really think it influences philosophy. I actually think it's flipped. I think philosophy very much influences, maybe indirectly, movies, where that's where I very much applaud like particular directors, such as like Christopher Nolan or the Coen brothers, because I think they were influenced by, like the Coen brothers, I know they like studied philosophy in undergrad. So very much influenced by various philosophical ideas they read about and they try to insert them into movies. And the reason I like to use movies is because movies, just like you kind of read a book, you read a book from front to back, right? And a movie is very much like that same complete picture. It's almost like this full picture argument for you. And it provides like storytelling with that. And that's why I see it as a very good medium to discuss these ideas, because it makes it like an entertaining way to do that and that connective bridge there. So
yeah, that makes sense. So would you notice then if like for example, there's a Lear Foundation that has its hands all over some scripts. Like you can see it like a mile away, injecting stuff that doesn't make sense for the narrative, and it's just basically SJW kind of stuff. Some of it's fine. Right. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with all of it, but it's just it seems like it's out of place in a lot of, or forced. So would you notice that in movies, and that might be part of like maybe what's philosophy has influenced that. I mean, maybe that I like the way you put that. It's the reverse. It's like the current philosophy is influencing entertainment in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and so I do agree. It's like kind of like, how do we clarify where it's coming from? Yeah, because I've like kind of recently come to the idea, because I used to think, academia, like they write all these papers and no one reads it, yada yada, right? Yeah. But then I kind of realized that sure, not a lot of people are reading it, but those like few people that are reading it might have a lot of influence, and that influence transitions, and it has like this ripple effect in culture, and that you very much see that in the movies then. Yeah. So going to the SJW stuff, you do very much see that in Hollywood movies. And I would even say in some like war movies, it's very much propaganda to promote war in a sense. Yeah. Yeah. And they have even some like obvious ones. We can even go to the Christian route. There's what are they called? I think it's like peer flicks or something like that. They do I don't know if you've ever seen the God's Not Dead movies. They do those. They do the very Christian heavy films. And it's absolutely funded by, Christians and whatnot, right? Yeah. You have these various groups and organizations and whatnot funding various film production companies to produce a movie that they might like, right?
That's a good point. Yeah, it's coming from all sides.
Yeah, it's kind of like where is that line at where it's like directly being funded and becomes propaganda?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like almost like a melting pot to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. I mean, especially, start looking at the documentary scene.
Yeah,
and exactly. It's just like, 90% propaganda. I mean, from all angles, right?
Yeah, from all sides,
By its nature, I think most documentaries are propaganda. Whether you like the propaganda or don't like it, you get the odd ones that are like, this is how a whale does stuff, and this is how, the tides work. I mean, that's not, but,
Otherwise, they're really trying to push a narrative or an agenda by showing one side of things, really.
Absolutely. Exactly. So it's funny you brought up documentaries, because I agree with you that pretty much any documentary.
And I love documentaries, for the record.
Same. Oh, same, for the record too. But still, it's like I like your point about propaganda is, propaganda can be propaganda, yet propaganda can be true, right? But also just documentaries that
just spin it. You can still spin the truth.
They're on this certain narrative, and to kind of use a show, for example. I don't know if you guys watch It's Always Sunny, but there's this episode that they do you?
Well, I seen them all before. It was one of my shows for sure. I still got them all on a hard drive someplace for sure. It's one of 5-6 shows that I still pull out and watch once in a while. It's like that one and like Arrested Development.
Oh yeah. So they do this episode on kind of making fun of documentaries, or at least this segment, and not to like spoil the show, but their commentary on documentaries is something I found really funny. Is they talk about how you start at let's say it's like a 10 series episode, and they start out and they like raise all these questions and like, oh, maybe let's say it's like about a murder. They say maybe this person did it, or maybe this person did it. And all along, they know exactly who did it throughout the whole series. But they wait till like the last episode of the series to reveal it. But they're kind of like spreading all this like false information almost throughout the series of like, oh, maybe it was this guy, even though if like in the end we know it's obviously wasn't, but like let's hype it up and like keep spreading this and make this guy look bad or this girl look bad. And that's kind of just the way documentaries go to an extent, especially like the murder and crime mystery ones, which I always kind of find funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, all of them really. Whether it's, I mean, and a lot of them are narratives that I tend to agree with. The documentaries, I'm watching documentaries that are pushing narratives that I tend to agree with.
Right.
And
Like
and when
it's
they
like a
don't,
complete
sometimes I
echo
get
chamber.
mad. I'm like, fucking David Attenborough. I don't want to hear about your global warming. I came here to hear about the ocean or whatever. But anyway, I digress.
So what about the materialism then? Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So like on the consciousness side,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm very much, I think the soul is an illusion, and basically, I will say, I don't know if we'll ever be able to explain consciousness. Like it's such a complicated subject. Like even the more we discover on the science side of things to help explain, what we see in the world empirically, we still really haven't made a lot of progress on like what exactly consciousness is.
Yeah.
And the progress I would say we made is I think it's become a commonplace understanding that this idea of the self and like me, there's like some place in my head that it's me, right? Like a central point. That's just not true.
Right.
But we can get into why, but is that what you meant by materialism, to clarify?
Yeah, well, I think the aspect of consciousness being non-local, like we've just done over the last 5 years, and some of the experiences I've had as well, just with whether it's your consciousness leaving your body or out of body stuff or spiritual aspects of it, and a lot of the science around that. I mean, we've got
So it's still
I got a
local.
book right here about an end to upside down thinking, and like just
So-
all these scientists that are pulling up all the evidence to show that consciousness doesn't just reside in the brain, like it's more of an antenna type thing. And I wonder if everybody would say science is a science. There might not be room for philosophy in science because science is a process, and it's a strict process of trying to find the truth that way. But maybe philosophy influences science because we know there's a lot of paradigms and
culture
dogma,
influences
and
science.
it's more of a scientism in a lot of ways now. And
Yeah, I'll stick up for philosophy on that end. So philosophy was very much like the beginning of these various other like scientific inquiries, right? And science and philosophy was that starting point.
the
And
hypothesis,
I very much
right? I mean,
look
how
at-
do you even start without it?
Exactly. So what you brought up is like the scientific process, and to me, that's very much a philosophical process. So what I mean is, like philosophy is this very much like broad spectrum of ideas. Like it's a broad discussion of basically anything you want to talk about. It's become specialized in academia, but it doesn't necessarily have to, in my eyes. Where like science is very much more of like this specialization and extension from philosophy. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're still doing philosophy, and that's why I'm very much that science and philosophy should not separate. They should be working together to have those discussions. Because like, I don't know, you brought up the out of body experiences. I would say science and philosophy would not deny those, but does that really provide evidence against the idea that, your yourself, the feeling of yourself, you as an individual, me as Brenden, right?
Yeah.
That is coming from my brain. Like you
Yeah,
can have an
yeah, it
out of body
could, but it-
experience. Like we have evidence the brain can produce that experience. It's still connected to doing
No,
it.
but that's where the evidence does show that you're not in your brain, because your body, your consciousness, your mind even is somewhere else in another location, and you're seeing that location. You're evidencing other things to prove that you're in that location. You're not in your body. And the problem
Right.
is, you said science wouldn't necessarily disagree on philosophy about that, but that's where I get into the materialism aspect. Is right now we're stuck in the paradigm where mainstream science does not think that's possible. like out of bodies and all this stuff aren't. But I mean, you're seeing this is where I think it's falling apart, because you're seeing scientific evidence all over the place showing that there is something to that now. That's what I mean by materialism. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess kind of get what you mean, but it's like almost like maybe those scientists that disagree, because I feel like I'm at least partially agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I feel like those scientists probably should just do enough acid and they'll have that experience.
I don't know. Acid didn't help me in that regard, but nothing helps me in that regard. I mean, I don't have any personal evidence of that.
I got some. I could pull some stuff out of the drawer over there that'll get you over, but we can't do it. We can't unless we can find.
Take you to another dimension.
Yeah, we'll be back in 20 minutes.
Well, do you have a better way to explain that?
We'll
what
be
I'm
back
talking
in
about?
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe you could just Brenden could just watch us like I can lie on the floor for a few minutes. A better way to explain what you're trying to explain?
Yeah.
I think no.
Because I think as the science changes, the philosophy changes as well. I mean,
I think the science has changed.
Ideas,
the problem right now is that the science is on our show on your side. It's just on your side in a bunch of different directions that haven't really talked to each other enough to change the overall consensus yet. Like if you look far enough down each of those individual
scientific
realms, it's pushing into those things. I think it might just be a matter of letting science catch up, but then you got to get the money out of it somehow, because that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think there's a lot of separation on around this discussion, and I'm hoping we're kind of talking about the same thing. But like, I think religion does hold people back from, because the idea of the individual self is very much a Western idea. Like Eastern philosophy was very much on board with this idea of this individual self being an illusion, and kind of going into, like, they didn't really explicitly say this, but the brain kind of producing that illusion of the self. They were on board with that, thousands of years ago. Very much become this recent Western thing that's kind of connected with science. But religion, the Western religions have very much kept this idea of this free will and this idea of an individual self being like separate from the body, throughout history. So that's kind of, that's where I also find it interesting, is kind of where my leanings are towards that science side of things of, you are just basically your brain, is because I see those that mix up in that mishap there of where that wall is for people.
Yeah. I think I was misunderstanding what you're saying actually too. So you're saying that old Eastern philosophy and then what you think as well is that the illusion is yourself, your sense of self from your brain. The illusion is that your brain is you.
So,
because I think you're saying that in a way you're saying the same thing, that illusion means that your consciousness is external. Or
so the
can
illusion.
Be?
So your consciousness. Your consciousness. Maybe it is external. We have to clarify what we mean by external.
Or you can access it externally.
Right. So I would say, I'm trying to understand what you're saying too, is what I mean is, like, your brain, right? It produces what I see as me, like my desires, like me wanting to take a drink right now.
Okay.
That desire, right? The illusion is that I decided to pick up this, I guess it's pink drink and drink it, right?
I don't think you should drink
that. What's that?
I don't think you should drink that.
See, exactly. So when I don't drink it, was it me making that choice? But what we know is about the brain is that, a couple, not even seconds, like it's like instantaneous. Like your desire comes before you make a conscious decision. It's not like I want a drink right now, and then you decide the drink, you have that desire for the drink. The desire is already there, and then you make the choice, right? That's like just one aspect to clarify about it. So does that help clarify like where I kind of stand a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm very much on the mindset that it's very much just produced by the brain. I don't think there's like this external me out there, right? It's like I would even say, I don't know if we can want to get into this, but maybe this helps clarify it, is I don't think there's like an afterlife for me where me as an individual is going to go somewhere.
Okay, yeah, cool. Okay.
You think you're a meat puppet?
Yep.
That's
So
one way to go.
would you be open to evidence that shows that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just don't.
Afterlife or reincarnation or or connecting to, and what I meant by external connection is some sort of download from the Akashic records or from your higher self or whatever other thing that there is, that it's not just all in here, that you're pulling from something else as well.
Probably just all a simulation.
Yeah,
honestly, at the end of the day,
it's all possible then.
Well, I mean,
that's possible.
Yeah, you're just like or either that or the other way I like to think of it.
Your soul is bits of information, and that's going to go on to the next realm. Then?
Maybe, or maybe not, or I even think of it as like it's like on the cellular level, the cells and molecules in my body can't just exist without, it's a simulation more in the sense that we're sort of, this whole world is existing on a cell and something bigger is sort of forearm, and it just needs to project some sort of meaning. Or I mean, even whether it's that or it's a hard drive, does it really matter? I mean, it shouldn't make it. The thing is, whether it's that or meat puppet or the other thing, it shouldn't make it any less special. I mean,
right. I think I agree with you, is that, like, let's say, because like we can't really, what we know about the limitations of our senses, for example, it's really hard for us to verify anything with like absolute certainty, right?
Yeah.
And
Except
that's just like
vaccine
limitations
safety.
of our consciousness, limitations of, how
Sight,
small we
everything.
are
Yeah,
in
yeah,
grand
yeah.
scheme of the cosmos.
Yeah.
That
well,
type
even
of
limitations
Even
of
the
like
small-
cognitive ability or like,
Exactly.
like,
Well, even the small spectrum that we can see or hear. I mean, the spectrum of sight and sound is so thin. I mean, how accurate,
Right.
But if it was more, it would probably just be too confusing because I'd just be able to see through the table, and
Yeah.
That's so how does I mean, when that's when you start looking at that the quantum physics end of things is where I think the science is starting to meet.
Spirituality.
Well, spirituality or simulation or something. It's meeting like high-end philosophy.
Yeah. I would agree. Like, are you talking like,
Well, I'm talking about it all, like entanglement. Like this table is 99.9999% not here, and so is my finger, and it's actually just two fields interacting with each other, and it's all just a fucking bunch of
It's
fields.
always the table in that example.
Well, what
Always.
else is here?
No,
You want to
from
use your
everybody
forehead?
else, too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
always.
and I would agree that the science and philosophy is very much interacted. And some people might find this controversial just because of how misinterpreted this idea has become, is postmodernism. And postmodernism is very much in line with that scientific understanding of what we can't verify. And these kind of, it's like humans have this inclination to want to have like this absolute truth, this meaning, yada, yada, right? But it's just like we can't verify that. We can't know where that is. And science has come to this agreement. We also have this philosophical idea that has come to this agreement. Unfortunately, we have people like Jordan Peterson and even Sam Harris jumped on board with this. They connect that postmodernism with like this. For some reason, they connect it with a political ideology and neo-Marxism. And anyone that's listening that's interested in that, I very much want people to go and look at postmodernism, because it's not what it's about. It's not
So
about.
Did you say it was unfortunate? They were unfortunately connecting that, or
Yeah,
fortunately?
because I don't think you should be connecting postmodernism
Yeah.
with neo-Marxism.
Yeah.
They're not compatible.
But what if you don't need to verify the details of that, but you can just verify what we're not? I mean, like, I feel like we don't need the answers, but we know that we're not just this physical current incarnation or current incarnation.
So, yeah, and that's where I'm at, because like I would consider myself very much like kind of like a David Hume style skeptic, where, like I said, like that's where you brought up, or would I be open to this like supernatural, not I won't even say supernatural, just the external me out there, right?
Yeah.
I would be open to that if we have evidence for that, for sure.
Yeah.
Like I'm not closing that off.
Yeah.
And I'm very much of the mindset that, yeah, you have to be open to these various things because we cannot verify with absolute certainty pretty much anything. I would say anything. I would even go that far. But we can verify things as more likely than other things.
Yeah.
Have you listened to much Skeptical?
That's where you can even get into morality and stuff like that. Like people have a really hard time saying like objective morality doesn't exist. I mean, first we'd have to clarify what subjective and objective means.
Yeah.
But you can also say that with like, it's not necessarily a bad thing if objective morality doesn't exist. And if someone says objective morality doesn't exist, they're not saying that we should just automatically become nihilists and start acting like complete assholes to each other. That's not what that person's saying. They're saying that, okay, there's like this spectrum of moral ideas. We can't know what the best ones with absolute certainty are, but we can reason through and use evidence, maybe use data, whatever it is, like whatever your moral stance is, like whatever you want it. Maybe it's happiness for people or the least amount of suffering, whatever your moral compass is. Okay. Maybe it's even religious. You can throw that in there. The idea is we can have a reason-based discussion about what the best one is, even though we can't say that it's the absolutely the best one.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. What were you gonna
I think that just kind of
have you listened to any of Skeptical?
I don't think so. Who runs that show?
Alex Sakaris.
Yeah. He gets really into the weeds on a lot of that NDE science and stuff like that. You might get a kick out of it.
Yeah, a lot of the consciousness stuff.
If he tries to get you on the show, just don't go. It's a fun show. It's a fun show, but he can be a little, he's not as easygoing as the Grimerica guys. Like if you said that on his show, oh boy, he'd be like, no,
it'd be good. He'd be pushing back. I mean, he might
actually,
convince you
might
of the
like
evidence.
it.
I mean, I can't cite the stuff that he can. I just, we've just talked to a lot of people that have supposed evidence that tells us otherwise. So it's just interesting to talk about. I mean.
Yeah, so he would be on the opposite end of what I just said, basically.
I think so.
Yeah, on the opposite end of there being no proof that we aren't something outside of our physical body.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's like that's where it, and that's why we have these discussions and disagreements.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's like there is this. Like, I don't think it's just like this obvious answer, right?
No, and I mean, the funnest part is having the discussions, and that's the crappiest thing about the discussions starting to get shut down.
Yeah, and that's why, like what I just put forward, a lot of people would immediately want to shut that down. And I also just like when I have this discussion with people is, I don't want people's just like desire for some sort of objective truth. Because like when people have this desire for like this objective truth that they just know with certainty, and that's why religion becomes so appealing. And when people have that, like I agree. I get why they do that. It's like when you have this objective truth, when you have this objective religion, objective God, whatever it is, whatever you believe is absolutely true, almost 100%, that is where you extend to be able to have meaning. And then that's where, if we want to talk about what philosophy boils down to, philosophy very much boils down to that is people are just trying to answer the question of meaning. Like, what do I do before I die? And people are very much afraid of this idea that maybe there isn't this objective truth out there. And when they hear that, they kind of freak out. But I want to remind people, like, just because we desire to have this objective meaning for ourselves, if that's what you desire, it doesn't make it any more valid and true. And that's what that's what I'd like to at least put across to people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't understand why people need an objective truth. I mean, I don't think we're like that, Darren, are we? I mean, I think we're pretty open to following the data and having rational, reasonable discussions about the stuff. But
as far as the data can take you, anyway.
But I do have a couple.
A bunch of life is subjective.
Yeah, but I do have a couple overarching objective truths like that I feel like after doing the show.
Well,
too,
because
and
even
after
like
that,
the objective morality is going to come down to I mean, there's going to be morality is going to be built in. Well, I guess whether you want to call it morality or not, but you're going to have some sort of special or some sort of morality towards certain people or certain things. You know what I mean? I think that's sort of ingrown, and maybe it's instinct more than anything.
Yeah.
I wonder where where instinct fits in on that.
Yeah, you could probably argue that a lot of what we do originally started with instinct. And then we kind of slowly stepped back and thought about it and thought about why did we have that instinct?
We just gotta throw a
purpose.
baby in the woods.
you mean like each
See what
person or
happens.
in like our evolution?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I wonder
I mean,
what would happen with a baby in the woods. Would it just like, because all these other animals, they just figure it out like almost instantly in most cases. Or within a couple of weeks, they know what to do. And they're just, you get the weird 100th monkey thing and all that. But even on a level of knowing to look up and watch for birds and stuff like that, it's just, it's uncanny. And humans don't seem to have that. I don't think a human can't even get through it needs
Help
like up for a
Yeah.
long time.
So yeah, I will say, so like the reason we need so much help is because we do have a much slower development phase. Like when we were born, like a lot of animals, like let's take like a dog or even like a cow. Like when they're born, their brains are very much, they're not fully developed, but like those instincts are already there. Like a baby comes out, they're very much going to be, they're still developing for a while there, where that's not the norm necessarily. I would say it probably, I don't know, it's been a while since I read up on this, so I'm kind of just going off the top of my head. But like apes, for example, are similar in that sense, right? Which is kind of the obvious connection.
So how would you explain that instinct then? I mean, if it sounded like you're saying that instincts come from the brain, which is almost fully developed, but if you watch some of those or read some of those studies from like Rupert Sheldrake and the morphic resonance type stuff, where they've measured these things in animals from different parts of the world, and once they started influencing, you might have to help me out with this one, Darren, but they'll start influencing somebody. Let's say animals
Animals have
growing
learned
up
to
in
do
North
something.
America, and they change that structure, and then they find that animals growing up in the UK are already adapted without being physically related to those animals. Like so somehow the instinct or consciousness or whatever is being transferred through generations non-physically.
Quantum evolution.
It's
Well, yeah,
super interesting. I mean,
So I do think so. I don't even know if we're necessarily disagreeing. I think it's almost like a part of our genetic makeup is that instinct is there.
yeah.
Right. Like we have instincts too. Like for example, like a mother's instinct when that child comes out of the womb, they have mother-like instincts to how to treat, like how to take care of it.
Yeah. And
nurture it,
the dad's
love,
DNA even
act.
changes, I think, after that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So we definitely have those
You assume we
encoded
do.
already
Yeah,
in
I
us.
wonder.
Like I don't know if I'd call it like an external. We
Right,
might be
right.
kind of disagreeing on the
Well,
language.
I guess it's different because
yeah.
it's hard to look at an example of that with humans in the wild, like where we can see that the bears just figured it out. We don't, but then, there's not really a good example of just a mom and a dad. And I guess there probably is, but they're not well documented to just, a mom off someplace having the baby and figuring it out by herself. I guess she probably would if she had, how do you remove someone from all that social contact and then have them just, if you remove someone from all contact with civilization and any other contact with people to learn that behavior of breastfeeding or birthing or whatever, and it just happened, I guess, would all that instinct be there or not?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I would say maybe it was at one point and it might still be. It's just people aren't really put in those circumstances anymore. But I mean, we came from small tribes too. So, but yeah, that's and we've had an evolutionary part of where we are today is very much humans' evolution to communicate. You know, Homo sapiens, they started communicating with each other. So it almost like took off this instinct load, maybe you could say.
Oh, yeah, that's
But-
interesting.
But there was an instinct to communicate. So you could still kind of connect it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's also like we don't have to have those immediate instincts. So that's why, like, for example, we're able to have kids and raise them for 9 months. They don't have to be like able to walk in like a week or in the same
Yeah.
day like a calf is able to.
Well, it's
You know,
also interesting because we talked to like Heidi
Heidi?
Schleifer
Heidi,
a
yeah.
couple weeks ago. Haiti, you fucker, you got me saying it the wrong way. And you know, I
connection
forget.
part, yeah.
Well, and this talks about you know you're born and you know humans seem to evolve with that connection in relation to another person to the point that you know the science coming out is showing that we can't even calm your central nervous system can't even calm itself down properly. It actually does that better with another human around, and it's like we're designed to do that through eye contact and everything else. So I suppose humans would be unique in that sense as well.
Right. Yeah. Humans definitely have a lot of things unique, but it's also when we like really get down into it, I feel like we very much see just how much we are connected to nature still.
Yeah.
It's always fun to look at too.
So are you going to continue with the philosophy education then after this, do you think? Like after a while? I mean, try to get your master's or your PhD eventually, or?
Yeah, I was thinking to at least get my master's just because there's a lot of good funded programs. And then like I'll weigh my options, kind of see where this podcasting route goes. I already do ghostwriting. So, you know, I kind of get to write about and research this type of stuff all the time anyway. So it's, you know, we'll see. I kind of want to at least get my master's for the credential so I can kind of advance topics a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
I know I can like kind of do that just in undergrad, but I do very much think there's something about the psychological credential there to
definitely.
take those next steps too.
What's that, another 4 years to get a master's or?
It's only two, and that's why
years.
I'm very much considering it, especially if it's you know funded and I get paid to teach. It's like, okay, I kind of somewhat already do that. Maybe a little bit more interesting teaching on my end because I get to use movies and whatnot and kind of what the culture gives a shit about at the moment. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
That's cool.
Well, and it could be interesting also to see where how the podcast would change over the the course of getting your philosophy masters, if that would influence your outlook at all, if the academia would creep in, any of that stuff. How old are you?
I'm 24.
24.
Just turned 24.
I'd be interested to see how your outlook is when you're my age in 15 years too, with a couple of kids. You know, I wonder because, I mean, I think now, and I was thinking, I wish I would have started this show when I was 20, in my early 20s instead of doing the stuff I was up to. But then, it's.
I don't know. Then you'd be missing something.
Not only that, I don't think I was. I wasn't. And I'm not meaning to say that you're not, but I was just, when I look back at myself 15 years ago, I was just like a different human being.
Yeah.
Like,
even like
completely different.
I look at myself.
Yeah.
And it's
I've very much become much more on the skeptic side over the past 5 years ago. If you had talked about me, I would have been all about like the whole absolute truth thing. And, we can know things with certain through our reason, all this good stuff. But,
well, and the reason I say that is because when, from 24 or probably from like, I'll even go further, from like 15 or 16 till probably like 30, I was a pretty staunch
skeptic.
Yeah, on everything. And that would rate down to atheist, like that full on biological robot, atheist, no soul, all that. So
you flipped to the other side?
I'm flipping. I'm flipping. It's a flip.
Flip-flopping.
Yeah. Like doing the podcast definitely over 6 years has changed my outlook on a lot of things. Having kids, dealing with death, dealing with just life, getting humbled by life multiple times and just some of the experience. I mean, most of all for outlook and stuff like that are just some of the conversations on the show and just seeing some of the things that some of the things that you can some of the things that are possible, you know, when the stuff you think might be just outside the realm of possibility, and then all of a sudden it's, you know.
When I started listening to podcasts, I don't know why, about 12 years ago, I started, a lot of the ones I was listening to at the beginning were like Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, like that materialism type thing. Like
Synchronicity, for example. I mean, that's been a huge thing in you know, when you start to notice those things all over the place, it's just, it's a weird thing. And it's like, you know, the more you're sort of looking at it, the more it starts to happen. And then, you know, it's like, at what point does chance run out? But it's never, you know, you're not winning lottery or anything like that. It's just these little things that are just, you're like, what in the
chance
fuck?
Yeah.
You know, and I mean,
especially
I'm not going to get into all that here.
On the show too. I mean, we had listeners send in their synchronicities that are quite incredible. Like they just cannot be chance or coincidence. I mean,
interesting.
Yeah.
Because then I wonder, you know, what's my outlook going to be in another 15 years?
Yeah, I went through that phase of materialism with the podcast, and then what got me was, you know, any kind of evidence to whatever UFOs or consciousness being separate or whatever. It was just denounce, like name call, kind of like, and I'm like, what? Eventually I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. Like I want to know more about, you know, what these people are talking about and not just denounce it because it doesn't fit in your scientific paradigm. Yeah, that's what turned me off of that.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, because you know what, the other thing that gets you thinking about is we do that other show, 13 questions, and it's just like, you know, you could answer those questions once every couple of years, and you'd have different answers, and it's an interesting.
So, do you think you're academic? When did you finish school?
I finished undergrad 2 years ago now.
So, do you think that
2 years ago?
Do you think that helped, like, transition you to more of a skeptic from just academia?
That's a good question, and that's something I've actually contemplated myself. Is honestly, I wouldn't give academia that much credit.
No, I wasn't saying it in that way.
No, but what I mean by that is, like, I was very much on the political side of things when I first got into undergrad because I have a political science degree too.
Okay, yeah.
And I was very much on the political side of things first. Like that was my go-to thing.
Yeah.
And political philosophy actually got me into philosophy.
Okay.
So I kind of gradually made this transition. I was like, okay, I'm actually more interested in philosophy. Still interested in politics and all that stuff too. But I just kind of like having these type of discussions like we had today. And I feel like philosophy is just like a good central point to kind of be able to do that and kind of have these fun combos, right?
Yeah.
And I would say that what undergrad did was introduce me to philosophy, because I do make fun of gen eds quite a bit, but I have to admit, I have to give some credit. I had to take philosophy for a gen ed, and we started talking about political philosophy. I was like, okay, you know, I don't get to talk about this in my political science major as much. Let me go take some more philosophy classes. And then it kind of went from there, and I kind of just went down, you know, we talked about rabbit holes. I went down the rabbit hole philosophy and, you know, kept asking why. And that's where I've gotten my stances. And I have no doubt my stances will change, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it will be interesting to see. Cause like I've done this myself. I look at myself even, you know, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I've gradually become more skeptical, but I would say skeptical in the sense that I'm willing to consider these, you know, interesting stories like you guys have been bringing up, and willing to pay mind to them because I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
Or you can't swear.
That's like very much my mindset is to, you know, not use the skeptic language or anything like that, or, you know, but it's very much of like, there's a lot of stuff in this world that I don't know. You know, I'm going to try to pursue the knowledge to know as much as I can, but I will never know enough.
Yeah, and skepticism is good. I mean, I don't want to come across like it's bad, because it is, especially nowadays where there's so much, you know, there is a lot of, I don't want to go back to that again, but there's a lot of, you know, proven fake news and propaganda, and there's a lot of lies out there. There's a lot of deceiving, and I try not to fucking, I did it again. Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I try not to, hang my sword on anything like that and just wait and see how everything shakes out.
I reserve the right to be wrong on everything I've ever said on this show. And I probably said some stuff I shouldn't have. And if I go over the course of my life, I definitely said a bunch of shit I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. But these days, I don't think I said as much shit that I shouldn't have. It still happens, on a daily basis or at least a weekly basis, but at least it's limited.
Yeah.
As much as possible. I could be wrong about everything, though.
Mindset has changed too. Is I very much I'm not as assertive as I used to be, where like I think I'm right for sure, right? Like, yeah, I have opinions. Obviously, everyone has opinions, and I try to make my opinions as strong as possible. But I'm also always willing to be open to new information and be wrong about things, right?
Yeah.
And I do. It's not like I'm saying like ideas are on this even playing field, because I know we already kind of alluded to this and talked about this a little bit. I'm not about that either. I do think there's good ideas and bad ideas still, right?
It's a hierarchy of ideas.
Yeah.
Find that happy medium between, paying mind to alternative evidence and also just being able to have like a coherent worldview to keep myself sane.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's all you can do is try and keep some sort of grip on reality as you hurl through space.
Yeah.
Or sit still on a flat disc, whatever it is. Sorry, David.
Right.
He's never listening. Anyway,
yeah, it's probably a good spot to wrap it up, eh?
Yeah, it's been almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, wow. It's been a great conversation. I mean, I go into these things like without a strict topic. I don't know if we're even going to have anything to say. So it's awesome to be able to just go back and forth and chat about stuff.
Yeah, it was fun. Because honestly, I didn't prepare a lot for it. You guys, I'm always down to have these convos. Just let me know.
Yeah, right on. Keep in touch and good luck with your podcast and all that. And
yeah, we'll do. And thanks again for having me. This was a lot of fun.
No problem.
Yeah. Have a great night, Brenden. Come back anytime.
Yeah, have a good one, guys.
Okay, take care.
Yep.
That was our chat with Brenden
Weber.
I almost said Weber.
I know. I don't know what it is with you and names. It's a thing.
I know.
It's a thing.
That was fun. That was good.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, I always get a little bit nervous when I don't have. Well, because
you just always get nervous.
No,
how nervous are you for Graham Hancock?
Fuck it.
No,
it's okay. Yeah.
That one's nothing.
No.
Oh, interesting.
No,
so
I've heard of enough. Like, because I can't just do this on my own, right? With you, and if we have a guy on like that who I haven't, it's not like he's, he doesn't have a spiel. We're just having a discussion, so. It's kind of up to us to bring stuff to the table too, and it's just
you have plenty to bring to the table, buddy. Okay.
No, you know what I mean. I feel like I'm skimming on the surface of a lot of shit, and I just don't know, 2 inches down on anything. That's sometimes the feeling I get. Just cram all these different topics for the podcast, and hopefully something coherent comes out of that fucking mishmash of stuff.
I'm sure you said a couple of coherent things.
You know what I mean.
Over the course of the podcast. No, I know what you mean. You get nervous if you feel like you have to carry the show or carry the conversation with your own antidotes.
Antidotes?
Experience? Anecdotes? Antidote?
Antidote, that too.
The antidote to the anecdotes.
No, but that was fun. That was fun. It was interesting to hear, like, it's interesting to hear the more of the postmodern kind of materialistic view in a way, and just push back on that a little bit and see how that goes. I mean, it's really, really interesting. Because I think postmodernism has had a pretty fucking rough go of it over the last couple of years with these guys,
Oh, yeah. They're just kicking the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, big thanks to Brenden for coming on the show. Check out his show, The Philosophy Guy. I think that's right?
Yep. There'll be links to that in the show notes.
I'm going to check out that other one, Philosophize This. Get my head wrapped around philosophy. See what it's all about. I got the Philosopher's Handbook too. I should just read it. It's got some Plato, some Socrates.
Yeah, that's kind of like that guy's podcast, going through the ages and talking, summarizing each one's view.
It's like fucking 6 inches thick.
Really?
Yeah.
It's called a handbook and it's 6 inches thick?
Yeah.
Should be a textbook.
It's not a handbook. It's much more like a
encyclopedia.
Textbook. Yeah. Anyway, check out all Brenden's stuff. Review his show, rate his show, listen to his show, download his show.
Actually, I got a philosophy book too. It's probably in storage. I should have it in the studio, and it's kind of got a summary of all the different topics. So I'll look for that one day.
The bookshelf's going to be full again.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we are full. But yeah, bookshelf's full.
Yeah, excellent.
Awesome.
Need more books. Yeah, guys, check out. Thanks for listening. We appreciate all you.
Yeah, we mentioned 13 questions, so you might as well just mention it now.
Yeah,
too.
check out the 13questionspodcast.com. Just 13questionspodcast.com.
But we're trying a real interesting thing with not outsourcing.
Open sourcing.
Open sourcing.
Open sourcing.
So people we've had a couple people subscribe now, and they're able to get their own podcast in the feed and interview their own idols or heroes or people that they respect or whatever, and get their own like Darren says, immortalize that into the feed of 13 Questions.
Immortalize it in podcast history.
We got 2 episodes a week coming out.
Boom, couple hundred listeners
Some pretty
already.
Deep questions.
Yeah, it's a great show. Check it out, 13questionspodcast.com. And while you're on the internet, typing stuff into your search browser, if you can, find it in your heart. Head over to Grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly on Stripe or Patreon or PayPal, or do a one-time donation or whatever you can do to help support the show. It helps us pay the bills. It helps us move forward and plan. And we got some ideas we want to do with some infrastructure down the road, and it just helps us feel appreciated, loved.
Yeah, because it's more about the feeling though. It's more about the planning for sure.
Yeah,
but still.
Yeah. If more people supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasting.
Emails.
Well,
are
you
good
get
to
all the
make you feel
emails.
that way too.
I don't get the emails.
Thanks for the emails. Send them to Graham at
Grimerica.com.
Yeah, lots of feedback,
I don't want an email.
Stories, sightings, synchronicities, experiences with extended consciousness.
Yeah.
Afterlife, OBEs, NDEs, stuff like that compile into a big pile of evidence that shows that we're not just created in our brain.
Huh. There you have it. Anyway, do all that stuff in the show notes. Check out the show notes. Whatever pod you play or you're on, you swipe left or right or whatever, you're going to find the show notes. You go through there, there's a bunch of stuff. Review the show, rate the show, share the show.
Text the show, email the show.
Text the show.
Call the
voicemail line. Support the show. Newsletter.
Sign your friends up to that.
Sign your friends up to the newsletter.
Without them knowing.
Like this. That's a good Easter present. So it's Easter coming up. Sign up all your friends to the Grimerica newsletter. You just got to go Grimerica.ca/news. There's a little box there. Type in an email address, enter. Email address, enter. Email address, enter. And
is there any way we can make it where they can just copy a whole bunch, put your whole address book in there?
No, it's against that sort of thing. It's pretty spammy.
Yeah.
Anyway, do all that great stuff. Have a wonderful Easter.
Yeah.
So if that's your thing.
No, but this is past Easter. This is coming out way after Easter.
This is super way after Easter. Sorry, I was thinking this is the intro.
Have a great May.
It's the outro. Have a great May. Thanks for listening.
We'll be at the cabin when this comes out.
Maybe. Yeah.
Possibly.
We'll see you next week.
We never did. reminder to be reminded.